The Pieces Lie Where They Fell by Evil Humor. Edited and co-authored by Anon E. Mouse Jr. Read for you by My Name is R. Chapter 28. Vixlei, Page Turner, Windbreaker, and Nightblade. Part 1. Vixlei. Vixlei learned that the distance on a map was not a steady thing when traveling through the backwoods. Steep ditches that caught Knight and Page by surprise and sent them tumbling down the sides. Thick spots of growth that had forced her and Windbreaker to wiggle through the trees that had grown far more closely together than any normal forest. And then there was the hidden swamp that had caught them all by surprise. Even Vittle wasn't amused when she'd fallen in, and she was waterproof. She was still a cat, she guessed. After that little bath, they had called a halt to dry themselves off, with both her and Rex refusing to move on in wet clothes. While sitting around and doing nothing for an hour or two, they did get to see Knight as a big ball of fur, which sent Windy into a fit of laughter, only for Knight to then push the griffin back into the swamp. When he had resurfaced and shaken the water off himself, it had taken one of Page's shields to keep them all, especially Nightblade, from being drenched all over again. After they finally got dried, it was noon and tummies were rumbling, and it seemed that Knight had drafted Page to make lunch, proudly boasting that she was the best cook he knew, despite her tendency to spice things up a tad. Vixlei had to admit that the salad was very good, and that Knight was right to stop her from adding any more spice. Thank the gods that Rex had the foresight to filter the water from the swamp so they would have something on hand to drink, both during their meal and the rest of their trip, or their mouths would have been burned. Knight had not been joking about her love of spices. If anything, he had been understating it. Vittle had already made plans to make some rigged bets, with Page eating spicy peppers when they got to the frontiers, and Page was looking very eager to try some of the more insane ones, as she had been forbidden by the matron from growing them so long as she was in Canterlot. With the kinds you like, you are going to love the dragon's breath peppers, Vittle told her. They were named that for a reason. Page's eyes widened at that, with her tail wagging in excitement, and Knight letting out a minor groan. "Remind me to have a mountain between us when you try one," he said, "if only so it can act as a fire shield." Page just smirked. "Don't worry," she promised. "I'll make sure to be looking away from you when I have it." Knight sighed again. "I have heard that one in the past," he snarked. "Then you decide to be all kissy and I have to live like a sea pony for a week." Vixlei cracked up at that, while Rex just shook his head in a resigned manner. "Entertaining as this is," he commented, "we should probably be moving on again. I believe our clothes are dry now." Page pouted at him, but gave no argument as they began packing up their things again, with Vixlei putting her now dry skirt into her pack, Rex sliding his vest back on and checking Wind's bird thing, whatever it was called. Very soon they were on their way again, staying by the rim of the swamp, with Vittle leading the way by climbing the trees to get a sense of where they were. They began to break into small talk. Namely, she took it upon herself to make some conversation happen. "So, Nighty, that sword of yours," she tilted her head towards the bat pony. "It has a name, right?" She'd be surprised if it didn't, as Knight seemed to be one of those serious fighter types that would name their weapons, not like her, who had done it on a whim and kept at it. "Yes, it's called Determined Point," he said, sliding his short sword out of its sheath and spinning it in the air before holding it horizontally across his chest. "It was a gift, of sorts, from from my brother Deepblade for my 10th birthday, and actually helped me get my talent emblem. It has been in the Blade family for a long time, and it was given to the youngest Blade, to prove that they can match the elder Blade. Knight let out a small sigh before shaking his head. And yours? Ah, finally. This here is Lady Kabonk, my fun hammer, she said, flicking out her squeaky hammer and doing a small spin with it overhead, as not to hit any tar. And this is Signor Hardhead, my hammer. Holding her other hammer in her good hand, she smacked a tree at random, causing an Owie's Odalus to fall out of it with a shout that was certainly profanity, before she landed on all 5 hands. Just in case I really need to bunk some heads. Why don't you just pick them up and toss them across Canterlot Mountain? Viddle snarked as she dusted herself off. That means I have to get in close to pick some tar up, spend time winding up for the throw, and then judge how high the arc needs to be. Vixlei shook her head. Not worth the effort. What is worrying is that I strongly believe you are not joking here, Vixlei, Rex said, taking a step backwards as she spun her hammers in small circles. I'll never say, she grinned, and winked at the diamond dog before looking at Viddle. You named your dagger? Nah, not my thing, Viddle shrugged as she walked with them on the ground. I'm not exactly the most creative when it comes to names. I'd probably just call it something like Edge, and my knucklebusters Lefty and Righty. I see. You got any ideas for yours, Windy? Vixlei asked the griffin, who blinked before tilting his head in thought. Not really, he said slowly, as he tilted his head to look at his crossbow and bolts. I haven't really thought of it. Any ideas? Both she and Knight scoffed at this, shaking their heads. Windy, it doesn't work that way, she said, rolling her eyes. It has to be either you or the original owner that names your weapon, Knight said, flashing a small smile at her, no doubt feeling good about this. He asked for ideas, guys, not excuses, Viddle said with a playful grunt, but Knight proved to be his grumpy self and missed the joke. But Viddle also proved to be her usual oblivious self to miss that Knight wasn't a jokey type of guy. Knight grumbled again, but some things you just couldn't fix right away. Getting him to loosen up was something she was going to get done. Part 2. Page Turner. As it turned out, Viddle's estimates had been way off, and as the sun set, they found themselves making camp again in the ruins of some old town. Both Wind and Knight were given straws to see who would make their supper, with the Griffin losing the draw. And it was for the better, as Knight only knew how to make the bare basics of breakfast, let alone a dinner meal for 6. Wind had made a pasta dish with a lot of seasoning from his various wine bottles, which actually tasted quite good, although the fact that Wind tasted the sauce far too often was worrying, and she wondered if she would need to take a bit more drastic steps in helping him get off the habit. She just wished she'd read more about this sort of thing. Viddle hadn't changed up the shift roster, nor did anyone really ask to move ahead of someone else. She could tell Knight wasn't going to offer his help again due to how it went last time, and it would be wrong of her to try to coddle him by going right before him. When it was finally morning again, and Knight had made his simplistic sandwich breakfast, Windbreaker had scoffed at how easy Knight was going. His words started off another fight, which had led to Viddle stepping in again against Knight, which left the Nox pony in a foul mood again. If we're meant to be the new virtues, Paige thought to herself as she watched this, no wonder the old ones barely interacted with each other beyond the quests and missions that the goddesses gave them. A few hours after they broke down camp, they were on their way again, and Viddle scampered down the treetops to tell them that they'd finally found a normal road. About time, Vixlei said, as she leaned against a tree and bent a leg upwards to rub her hoof, as the rest of them meandered forwards, with Windbreaker and Knight saying they were going to scout ahead. "My hoofs are killing me," she giggled, looking nervously at Rex, who simply rolled his eyes to show he took no ill will from it. "Hey guys, I think we found something," Knight called out, trotting back from the forest section he was investigating. "Vittel, is there one of your kind's hideouts nearby?" "No. Why, what did you find?" Vittel asked, as she loped past Knight and down where he had come from. "It looks to be some sort of hidden bunker. It was covered by grass and vegetations. I almost dismissed it as a hill when I accidentally put my hoof through the roof," Knight said, as he took the lead from Vittel, with every pony right behind them. After a few minutes of walking through the forest, with Knight on edge to find the hidden bunker again, they reached a clearing in the forest to see the false hill. "This side," Knight said, taking them around the hill to a sheer wall of creeper vines. He began tapping the side of it, with it sounding like wood. "You hear that, right? That's not dirt," he said, taking a step backwards, examining the wall. "Yeah," Vittel said with a distracted voice as she began to tug the creeper vine down to show an old-fashioned cottage wall. "If that's here, then that must mean," she said as she sauntered to the middle of the hill and tugged the vine down to reveal a door. She then turned to look at them and shrugged her shoulders. "Normally I don't go poking my head into abandoned, lost places like this, but after the week I've been having, I don't see how things could get weirder." Placing her hand on the doorknob with a grunt as she forced the door open with her shoulder, they walked into what seemed to be a den of some sorts. The dust covered white sheets over everything. Paige couldn't place her hoof on it, but she swore she had been here before. But that was She froze as she turned her head to see a very familiar-looking shape in what had to be the living room. With her horn glowing to remove the sheet, she saw an extremely familiar-looking couch that was in the exact same spot. "No, no, no," Paige said in awe, as she removed more and more sheets, using her magic to rearrange the furniture, and let out a gasp of shock and awe. "It can't be," she whispered softly, turning her head to see Knight was behind her, supporting her. "What is it, Paige? What's wrong?" he asked her, eyes darting around for any hidden danger. "I was here before, when I talked to the stern warden. I mean Fluttershy," Paige said as she turned to face the rest of them. "This was her house, guys. Do you know what this means?" "I do believe it means we have discovered the lost city of the Virtues," Rex said in wonder, looking around the cottage. "This is the discovery of the century. Think of all the stuff I could sell on the market. Genuine artifacts from the city of the Virtues," Vittel said, eyeing some of the belongings of the late Fluttershy. "Only issue, beyond the morality of it, is how you will be able to prove it," Knight pointed out, causing the Owies Odalist to pout. "You are not selling Fluttershy's things regardless," Paige said sternly, as she gave Vittel a look. This is history come to life." She looked around. "Besides, I don't know if she has any relatives still alive today, but if she does, this would all rightfully belong to them." "Gah, if the Magi of Stars had relatives, would you return all the lost scrolls to them?" Vittel asked, with a bit of snark in her voice. "Yes, actually," Paige said with a smile on her face as she began to dust the room, before blushing as she realized what she was doing. Working so long in the Great Library had made her into an instant clean-up mindset. "It is the right thing to do." Vittel scoffed as she walked into the kitchen before turning around as she sat down on the couch with a plop, sending out a massive wave of dust. "Okay, here is the plan, guys. Half of us are going to go into Sunnytown to pick up supplies, while the rest of us stay here and see if we can find anything about the elements." "Sounds good," Vixlei said as she picked up an old trinket. So, who's going? Rex, Wind, and... She paused, rubbing her chin with her tail hand. Night, tag along with, okay? Night flashed her a suspicious look before turning to Paige. Will you be okay, Paige? Yes, Night, of course I will be okay, she said softly, pulling him into a kiss on the lips to ease his worries. Come along, gentle dogs, Rex said as he retrieved the map from Vittel. Let us head out so we can be back here shortly. As soon as the guys were gone, Paige turned to Vittel, who had already had her hands up. Rex is the smartest of us, so I can expect him to get us a good deal. Wind is a griffin and won't cause too many heads to turn, like Vixlei would get. And I'm giving Night something to do, which should make him and you happy, right? Paige looked up at her before sighing and nodding her head. Yes, Vittel, but maybe you could have told Night this? Vittel scoffed, shaking her head as she began to root around the room. Please. Night doesn't seem like the kind of pony to like pity, so if I told him, he'd just get angry again. Yeah, no offense, Paige, Vixlei said as she squatted low to check out some of the drawers. But I can kinda see Night not being the type of calf who likes to know he wasn't picked last to spare his feelings. Paige sighed, knowing full well that they were both correct about this. With nothing she could do about Night, Vittel, or those watching them outside the cottage at the moment, Paige simply joined in the rummaging of the cottage to see if they could find anything that would be able to help them. Part 3. Windbreaker. It wasn't that long of a walk once they found their way to the road. Windbreaker had to admit it was kinda nice being out in the wilderness, being completely free and unattached to anything. He hadn't had much time to really think about it, but he was free now. He might still have his debt, but the government couldn't track him down anymore and force him to pay it back. He could do anything he wanted to do, go almost anywhere he wanted to, and if Vittel was willing to help him, he could become any pony he wanted to be. He just wanted to fly up into the air and shout in joy, but that wouldn't be too smart and could get them caught. So how will we do this, Rex? Night asked, causing Windbreaker to look over at the Bat Pony. He wasn't sure whose idea it was exactly to have Rex walk in the middle of them, but it was a good idea. Simplicity should be our main goal, with minimal interactions, so we are not spotted and information passed to Canterlot, the Diamond Dog said, before tilting his head, flicking an ear. With that said, though, we should spend some time gathering information, which means... He trailed off, turning his head to look at them. What, Rex? Windbreaker asked, feeling a bit nervous. What is it? The best way I know of to gather information is to go to the location where the lips would be the most loose, Rex said, with Night letting out a tiny hiss. What? Where? Windbreaker asked, feeling his face heat up a bit, as Night was preening over the fact he knew what Rex was talking about, and Windbreaker didn't. He's speaking of a bar, Night sniped at him, shaking his head. Which is a stupid idea because you have your addiction and we don't need you to get into a drunken state. Hey, I said I don't drink to that state, Windbreaker said, almost jumping over Rex to get at Night, but the Diamond Dog was having none of it. Behave, Rex growled at them, holding them both back. We need to work together in this town, which means we cannot fight amongst ourselves. Windbreaker, I trust you to not overindulge yourself, and Nightblade, I trust you that you will supply excellent support in case something does happen, as well as be able to converse with the ponies of Sunnytown, as you have no doubt been taught how to talk to others. Yes, Night said skittishly all of a sudden, looking away from Rex. I'm sure I can do that. Windbreaker raised an eyebrow at Night losing all of his confidence out of the blue, but felt it wasn't worth poking that hornet's nest. Good, Rex wagged his short tail. Now, let us be on with it. We are here. Turning his head, Windbreaker saw they were in a tiny town. There were a few buildings laid out in a small sprawl from the road, with a lot of them 2 stories tall, which made Windbreaker think the ponies that lived here lived above their shops or in the back of them. He could spy an inn, a general store, a small police station, a healer's place, and a few other nondescript buildings. There were a few ponies walking around, giving them welcoming nods and friendly smiles as they made their way into town. It didn't seem like these ponies were aware of who they were, which was good. Maybe they were safe from Canterlot and the monster that took over Gentle Step. Come on, let us see what we can learn, Rex said, with a smile on his face that was matched by the one on his beak and Knight's face. I have a good feeling about this. Trotting down the road with the 3 of them smiling and greeting the Sunnytown ponies like they were old chums, Knight held the door open at the inn for Rex and him before they walked over to the bar. Hello there, cuties, a mare with a white coat and orange mane said next to a stallion with an orange coat and a blue mane. I'm Starlet, and this is Roneo. We own this inn, and I'll be your server today. So best tell her what your poison is now, or she will get creative, Roneo chuckled, nuzzling the mare who batted him away playfully and told him to stop with just as much mirth as before. Then again, she does do good work on the fly, with our dear Starlet being a foremost bar mare, a 3rd pony said, walking up beside them. He had a brown coat and an orange mane. He held out his hoof to Knight. Hello, gentle ponies. My name is Gladstone, and it is a pleasure to meet new ponies in our dear little community. It is nice to meet you as well, Knight said, smiling broadly at this stallion, shaking his hoof. This is Windbreaker and Rex. We're new here. We hope you like it, Mr. Blade, Gladstone said, patting Knight on the back. Light ciders for me and them, Windbreaker said, with something tickling the back of his head, but he couldn't place his talon on it. Coming right up, Starlet said with a smile before disappearing behind the bar to fetch the drinks. So what brings you 3 out here? Not much, Knight said, still smiling. We're just traveling outwards, right guys? He bobbed his head at Rex and Windbreaker before taking the offered drink. Thank you, Starlet. Likewise, Rex said before holding the bottle out to Knight and Windbreaker to clink it. Cheers. Cheers, both Knight and Windbreaker said, taking sips of it. Instantly, the blood in Windbreaker chilled as he looked at Rex and Nightblade. Guys, we need to get out of here now, he whispered under his breath as soon as they were alone. This isn't cider, and she claimed to be a bar pony. Come on, Wind. Just because she got the drinks wrong doesn't mean we're in danger, Knight said in a low voice, shaking his head and taking another long drink from his bottle. Knight, you're smiling, in a good mood, and we're actually getting along, Wind hissed, feeling his heart begin to race as he began to feel something like intoxication. Curling his talons to fight it back, he pressed the issue. And that Gladstone knew your name. Knight and Rex froze, with both of them putting their bottles down. Oh, Knight said, looking nervous. You're right. Let's get out of here now, he said as he pushed himself away from the counter, with Rex and Windbreaker right behind him. And here we were hoping that you 3 would be staying a while longer, Gladstone said, with Starlet and Roneo on either side of him. Then they shed their pony bodies to reveal darker forms, and Windbreaker knew that things had just gotten a lot worse. Part 4. Page Turner. They had spent a good 20 minutes exploring the first floor, before coming to the conclusion that any documents would have faded long ago, and that the second floor was not to be tempted, as it would cave in, and that they should begin to settle in for the night. As she finished unpacking her pack, there was a knock on the cottage door. Viddle and Vixlei tilted their heads, as it was far too early for the others to show up. Who could that be? Vixlei mused aloud, shifting on her hooves. Ain't this place really out there and not known? By all the dust, yeah. Viddle rubbed her nose, as the person on the other side of the door knocked again. Do you think we should answer it? Paige asked hopefully, as she was getting tired of this. I don't, Viddle began, but Paige decided to use her magic to open the door to settle this matter. Instantly, 3 ponies walked into the room. They were 3 earth ponies, with 2 mares and 1 stallion. The stallion had a grey coat and a black mane, while the first mare had a light grey coat and a dark red mane, and the second had a green coat with a mossy mane. Hello there, the stallion said, flashing a far too wide smile. My name is Greyhoof. These are my companions, Mitta and Three Leaf, and you 3, Viddle, Vixlei, and Page Turner, are coming with us. What makes you think that's going to happen? Vixlei asked, as she pulled out Senior Hardhead, only for Mitta to grow a dark horn and hit her with a bolt of green magic, with Three Leaf doing the same to Viddle. Greyhoof tried to do the same to her, but Paige was in no mood for it. All right, who are you 3? She snapped as she saw them drop their disguises, and found herself frowning even more. And what manner of changelings possess that kind of armor? She demanded, already angry at what the answer could only be. I don't think you know exactly how much trouble you are in, criminal. Greyhoof, or whatever his name was, narrowed his eyes. Who are you to demand such things? He glowered, but kept the 2 nymphs in line behind him from advancing. Paige dropped her own disguise, and their eyes went wide as she let her connection to the hive reach out towards them. I am Lamella, she snarled, as she was proven correct to who they were, or who they were descendants of. Now, tell me, who are you, and what is going on? Now! She barked, unable to keep her anger at bay. The drones shuddered in complete shock. No! Paige stalked forwards, her wings buzzing in fury. You do not have the right to say that. None of you traitors do. High talk, coming from someone like you, the nymph Mitta was silenced by Greyhoof, using his magic to clamp her mouth shut. Ruby Shell, silence. The drone snapped at the nymph, before turning to face Paige, bowing his head slightly. I am Captain Memorizing Grace. Gaze! Memorizing Gaze. Secret protector of the hidden guards, as was my father and his father before him, he said in a clear tone, matching her eyes. So that was what your ancestors got for betraying Queen Chrysalis to the ponies, and damning the entire hive to extinction? Paige could not keep the bitterness out of her voice. If there was some pony that she could blame for the current state of the changelings, it was them. My ancestors betrayed a queen that launched a suicidal invasion that not only failed, as all the generals said it would, but one that refused to try and pacify the mourning and vengeful equestrians, he said just as hotly back into her face, showing he had some spine in him. You know that Chrysalis was planning on using her child as a means to claim the throne of Equestria in some twisted fashion. You know that it would have resulted in a direct war to kill us all off. They did what they felt was right to save our race, at the cost of being exiled from the hive. And thanks to them, we had 1,000 years to enjoy our hive's slow death, instead of a quick end. Paige snorted, shaking her head. She then forced herself to stop and control herself. It would do her no good to just feed into this ugly shouting match. The emotions were turning vile, and she didn't want to be left gagging for a month because of this drone. She looked at Vixlei and Viddle, and turned her attention back on the drone, eyes narrowed. Are they going to be fine? Of course, Lamelia. His usage of her real name caused Paige's chitin to itch, and the urge to smack him across the face rose. Standard minor knockout spells. We were going to place you three into cocoons to bring you back to Canterlot." He then blinked and peered at her. "What is going on here, Lamelia?" "First off, you do not call me that. You, of all changelings, especially given what you and your two brothers were meant to be for the Hive, have the least right to address me like that," Paige snapped, before she shoved her anger back down. "And—" she stopped, getting her head in order to properly explain all this to him. "We, the 6 of us, were contacted by a spirit called Balance that told us some evil creature had taken control of the government. It also told us we're the latest bearers of its elements that the Virtuous 6 had, and we're currently on a quest to get the last 2 awakened so we can stop Gentle Step, who we believe that this creature has overtaken." Paige then realized how utterly insane and stupid it sounded when she said it like that. "Normally, I would dismiss such accusations out of hoof," Memorizing said with a roll of his eyes, causing Paige's blood to shimmer again. "But as it is coming from you, I will keep an eye on her. If she really has been subverted, I will take proper measures to stop her. Know that you will have the full support from the hidden guards if you cross paths with my guards in the future, no matter what happens." "Good," Paige said, refusing every instinct telling her to thank him. Her anger at the offspring of the Hive's greatest treasures. Traitors! Too great to overcome at the moment, even if he was risking a lot on his end. His guards looked like they wanted to ask her that question, but Memorizing simply looked at them and they straightened up as proper guards should do. That was good, as getting that question from regular changelings was bad enough. Having it from them would just set her off again, as she wouldn't be able to control her anger this time. "Until next time, Page Turner," he said, bowing his head as they began to leave the cottage, with Paige holding her breath until the door was closed. With a loud sigh, she rested her head against the door as she tried to get her emotions in order. She felt her heart racing and her mind trying to point out something she was missing, but she couldn't place her hoof on it. "So, you're a changeling?" Vixlei's voice from behind her caused Paige to yelp and jump in the air. "Makes a ton of sense, eh, kitty cat?" "Oh yeah," Vidal groaned as she propped herself up on the sofa's arm. "One thing though—" "Ooh, nope, not standing up right now," Yowie Zodalus whimpered as she slid back down. "Why didn't you guys tell us about this?" "What? Huh?" Paige squeaked, her wings flickering out in confusion. "You girls aren't, you know—" She gestured to her face, aware that she was still in her true changeling form. "What are you talking— Oh, nope, Biddy, nope. Vidal grabbed the wall to lower herself back down. Vixlei grabbed the wall to lower herself back down, with her other hand holding her stomach. "What are you talking about, Paige? The fact you're a changeling?" she asked in true confusion, looking to Vidal for support. "Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I've got no beef with you changelings." Vidal waved her tail hand dismissively. "I don't think Vixlei has any problems with you either, right?" "Nope," the Minotaur said, shaking her head. "I mean, I guess I can see why you'd be surprised with that, with you living in the second most anti-changeling city in the whole world." Paige was desperately trying to get a grasp on this situation, but Vidal came in again. "So why didn't you tell us about it? I mean, it could have really reflected... Let me start that sentence over. So why didn't you two tell us about it? I mean, it could have really helped us out if you could sense people's emotions like a timberwolf does blood. Because revealing that I'm a changeling is an extremely... Okay. Because revealing that I'm a changeling pony half-breed is extremely dangerous for me to do. And what do you mean, you two? Paige frowned at this, wondering who this second person was. You and Knight, who else? Vidal snorted in annoyance, with Paige doing her best not to blush at the comment. Unfortunately for her, both the Minotaur and the Oizodolus saw it and gasped. "You haven't told him?" Vixlei practically shouted, with Paige doing her best to hush her as if Knight could hear somehow. "No, he doesn't know that I'm part changeling," Paige shot back, with Viddle stirring again. "How's that even possible? Aren't you two dating?" Viddle asked, with shock written across her face. "Again, telling people I am part changeling would be extremely dangerous for me. I don't know how Knight would react if he were to find out." "Are you kidding me?" Vixlei laughed, shaking her head. "You've got him wrapped around your little... that phrase doesn't work if you don't got fingers." "What she is trying to say is that you really don't need to be able to taste emotions to see how much that colt loves you," Viddle said, shaking her head. "I mean, I'm no changeling, and even I can see how much he loves you, and that the idea of him rejecting you is loco. Look, girls, I appreciate all the advice, but please, I need some air right now." "You should tell him the truth," Viddle said, tipping her head forwards. "You're crazy. I don't even know how to tell." She was cut off as the door opened, revealing a familiar face staring at her. "Knight?" she squeaked in surprise. She felt a wave of emotions from him, all too overwhelming and too quick for her to pick apart. But then Knight settled on rage. Seething rage and hatred, with a curl of his lips forming a snarl, and his eyes narrowing. He hissed a single word at her. "Monster!" Part 4. Nightblade. Knight was doing his best to fight back the effects of the booze and these changelings, focusing on his anger to push away all the happiness that the changelings were no doubt pumping him with. Rex had stopped reaching for his pockets, in the off chance he'd blow them up, and Wind was doing a good job at using the bar stool to swat them away. He never thought he'd be happy that Windbreaker knew his booze that well to spot the fake. He pulled out his sword and was doing his best to fight back, causing the changeling to dance back. Wind had grabbed a bar stool and thrown it at his changeling, before tackling it over to prevent it from using its magic on him. Rex had also gone for close fighting, jumping on its back and the changeling doing its best to buck him off. While Knight might be expected to be at something of a disadvantage, fighting something that had magic, he was good at fighting unicorns. Using his wings to take to the air and to get behind it, he could see the changeling was really getting frustrated, its magic swipes becoming clumsy. Soon he'd be able to disarm it with the help with Windbreaker or Rex. All of a sudden, the changeling in front of him stopped and tilted its head. Knight froze, his sword hesitating from completing the strike to knock the changeling unconscious. "What is it?" the changeling dealing with Wind, Starlight, hissed at his changeling. "This griffin may be a shrimp, but he is heavy." Roneo, or whatever his real name was, tilted his head towards the changeling dealing with Rex before the two changelings stopped. "Well, that happened," Gladstone said with a huff. "What is going on here?" Knight growled, eyeing the oddly dressed changelings. He never knew a changeling could have stuff, let alone armor that seemed well kept. "We've got orders, Knighty," his changeling grinned. "Our leader just finished dealing with your mares." They snickered at this, with the blood draining from Knight's face. "We don't need to deal with you three anymore." They might have said more, but Knight wasn't there. He was already out of the bar and flying as hard as he could back to where Paige was. This was his greatest nightmare coming true, and he was cursing himself for thinking he could trust Viddle or Vixlei to keep Paige safe. He wasn't sure what Wind was squawking, he didn't care. He just had to make sure Paige was safe. He never flew faster in his life, and yet he felt he was moving at a snail's pace, hating himself for not training his wing muscles in the past. He could feel his heart screaming in his chest, with horrible things that they were doing to Paige flashing through his head. He just needed to go faster, faster, faster! Finally, he reached the cottage, almost crashing into the ground as he landed, desperate to make sure Paige was safe. He could hear her voice, with his heart beginning to slow as he reached for the already turning doorknob. "You're crazy! I don't even know how to tell—" The door opened, and he saw a changeling wearing Paige's necklace and her element stare at him, her blue eyes widening in surprise. "Knight?" it squeaked in surprise. Knight felt his heart drop at this, before he realized that this is what those changelings meant, that they had taken Paige and were stupid enough to try to fake being her. "Monster!" he hissed, with all the rage he could muster, before he tackled it through the doorway and smashed it into the coffee table, bringing his hoof into its face again and again. "Where is she?" he roared as he smashed its face, Knight's rage building as it dared to try to pull away. He slapped its hooves away, grabbing its head and slamming it into the ground. "I said, where is she?" he shouted again, snapping his wing out as he was dimly aware of someone behind him. The tumble and pain noise told him it was dealt with for the moment. Knight wrapped his hooves around its neck and started to squeeze. "I will kill you if you do not tell me where I can find my love, Page Turner." He felt it trying to reach for his neck, and Knight's rage was at its peak now. He brought his hoof up to smash its skull when he noticed that his own necklace was dragging him down, tugging at his neck. That didn't make sense. The only way for it to work like that would be... Knight looked at the changeling he was on, and suddenly, everything about Paige made perfect sense. Why she refused to ever see a doctor, why she was good with foals, why she was so pleasant and happy all the time, why that changeling came back to her in Canterlot, and so many more things fell into place. In the next second, his rage-narrowed vision cleared up, and he saw Vidal and Vixlei cowering in fear in their corners. Windbreaker was gasping for breath behind him, with Rex standing over him, and under him was... Knight's entire body began to tremble as his mind slowly made the connections he did not want to. Looking back at his hooves covered in blood, in her blood, he let out a tiny whisper. "My goddesses, what have I done?" Alright, sorry for the delay on this chapter. First things first, I totally did not see Gladstone and his ilk being changelings coming. It was obvious. I believed that was what they were supposed to be shown as at first, but I knew them from Story of the Blanks, and I thought for sure that this was them. No, this is not that version of them. This is a different version of them. They're not in canon, so they don't have to be the same. I tricked myself into believing they were something else very firmly. I was even thinking as I was reading this chapter, before the point where the changelings attack Paige and her group, that I was not sure that Paige was a changeling, but I figured it was still pretty likely. Way more likely than that these guys were going to be changelings. So Paige being a changeling, totally saw that coming. So have quite a few people, although not everyone. Gladstone and his group being changelings, that came out of nowhere for me. I mean, I knew it as a possibility, but it was... I was so certain I knew, and I didn't. It was wonderful. I was truly surprised. I like it. It's great. Didn't see that one coming. Despite all the signs that's what was going to happen, I managed to ignore every sign that's what was going to happen. Yes, the shape-shifting black monsters are changelings. Normally that wouldn't have been a surprise. But they're shape-shifting black monsters in their normal reality too. And that's about where the similarities end. So, changeling Okay. I didn't foresee specifically half-changeling coming, although that's not much of a surprise, and perhaps something to do with that, or a magic spell Paige knows is how Paige has avoided being detected by the changeling lights. Whew. I really hope Paige recovers alright, because what Knight has done here, that's a lot of damage if I'm understanding this correctly. Yeah. Hooves are hard. Yeah. He might have broken several bones in that assault. Fortunately, he was stopped before he beat her skull in. Yipe. Ooh. Yipe. So yes, I was surprised for all the wrong reasons here, and it was beautiful. And now I'm very worried about what's going on with Paige's health. Also, I wonder what the second secret is. Is it part of the first secret, like specifically half-changeling, or how she's... I think she is related to, a descendant of, the heir to the changelings. Like, they mentioned a changeling who was theoretically in charge of the changelings, and they were in hiding. And now we have her, who's really powerful apparently, able to deflect changeling detection. I think she might be in the lineage of queens. Like, not just all of them are the children of Chrysalis, but I think Paige might be in line for the throne. Not 100% sure. Not as sure as I once was she was a changeling. But I think so. Assuming she lives through this. I think she's gonna live through it. I really hope she lives through it. Alright. Oh, by the way, in case someone was wondering, loco is crazy in Spanish. I didn't translate it for the last couple times it came up. Let's see, is there anything else I should do while we're discussing? I suspect Rex is the one who got Rex to stand between Windbreaker and Nightblade. That seems like the sort of thing he would think of. Ooh. Alright. I think that's all for this chapter. Wow, yeah, this was a doozy. The bit where they were dangling in front of me that they refused to state whether or not the original nature of Sunnytown and its inhabitants was plot relevant later. I did not see it coming that was because they straight up weren't those at all. Not that it is revealed in not a climactic way. Not that it's revealed quickly. No, it just straight up that's not what happens. So spoiling that spoils nothing. It makes the reveal an actual reveal. Because if you don't know about those guys, the obvious answer is that they're changelings. It was a twist that those without the extra knowledge would not notice was a twist at all. I was very... Yeah, I like that. They did very good. Evil humor, you have my support for the Sunnytown twist. I did not see that coming. I specifically denied it would happen, and then it happened, and it was a good way that happened. You did well here. I have good feelings for this. I hope Paige lives. Alright. I think that's all. Goodbye, everyone. I'll see you in a while. It won't be soon. But not never. I'm still doing this. Goodbye.